Hi, in this video I just want to point out a few of the things about the cameras that we're going to be bringing down to the forge for your camera induction. So the college has a set of Nikon D3400s. They are really nice, compact, entry-level DSLRs, lots of features in them and a few little quirks to be aware of. If you've never encountered Nikon or you shoot with a different brand, there's some funny bits where the buttons are, and I'm going to run through those now. So on off is going to be right here on my forefinger. There we go, so the camera's on. The shutter button is built into that on off switch and it's halfway down to focus the camera and all the way down to take the picture. So there's a little resistance before you can focus it and then commit to actually taking the picture. So when you turn the camera on, the first thing it's going to do with most of the lenses we have is it's going to give you a little warning sign that says, before you take any pictures, unlock the lens. So Nikon have built these little lenses and they've just got a little lock button on here. So push that in, turn the lens, and once you've gone into its zoom range, the camera will let you take pictures. You've opened the camera up. So what I'm going to encourage you to do in the forge is to shoot with the cameras in manual, so you have control over the camera settings, and that's there on the very top. If you can see that little dial has lots of different exposure modes on it. The one I've set it to is M. That's the one where you have control over the shutter speed, the aperture and the ISO, and I'll run through the others in just a moment. But when you've got M selected, what you should have on the back is this little screen, and that is kind of showing you the setup for everything that's currently set up on the camera. And it's got three big dials in the middle and they are showing you your shutter speed, your aperture and your ISO respectively. So just to run through them very quickly, the shutter speed controls the amount of movement you're going to have in your picture, and they're measured in seconds or fractions of a second, and this one's set to 125th of a second, which is a good starting point for shooting handheld. You're probably not going to have too much camera shake. The thing you're photographing, unless it's moving very fast, won't be very blurry. So 125th of a second, great starting point. The one in the middle is the aperture. That controls how much light comes through the lens. And you can see from this graphic that it's really wide open, 3.5, that's the widest this lens can go to. So what this would allow me to do is to shoot shots where I am blurring the background or foreground out. If I hold this little button here and then turn this dial at the back, I can control the aperture. So there we go, I've closed it right down now to f22, and if I shoot with a really small aperture and with a big number, so the big number equals small aperture, then I can have everything in focus throughout my picture. So it depends what you're photographing and how much of it you want to be in focus. And what I should have said with the shutter speed, of course, is this dial at the back is where the controls are. So if I turn this dial on its own, I change the shutter speed. Put that back to 125th. If I hold this button down with a little plus minus on it and turn the dial at the back, I control the aperture. And on this side, I've got one that says FN. If I hold that one down and turn the dial, I can change the ISO. Okay, so the ISO is how much we're boosting the signal from the sensor. The sensor's built to work at 100. That's what it's designed for. But if I've got the shutter speed I want because I'm shooting handheld, if I've got the aperture I want because of the amount of depth of field I want, and it's still too dark, which it is here, you can see on the meter that's pointing towards the minus, then maybe I need to boost the ISO up to get something usable. And I can do that there. Or back to the middle. And then that should give me a usable picture. And what you're getting underneath these three is a little dotted line with a 0 in the middle and a plus on one end and a minus on the other, and that's the metering system. That's the bit that's driving the camera. In this mode you're in control, so the camera's looking at what you're pointing it at, looking at the light coming in through the lens. It's measuring it, and it's giving an indication of whether it thinks the picture is going to be too light or too dark. So here, I think we get quite a good picture. It's not over. It's dark. It's dark as a photograph. I've got my shoulder in the picture, but we're not overexposed anything. We've not underexposed anything. If I was to change, so here we go, 125th of a second. You can see we're on the 0 pretty much in that metering. If I change it so that I start to go towards minus, take a shot or two, I get a very dark picture. If I go the other way, now my shot's too bright and I've overexposed my picture. So that's what's driving the camera. And if you put the camera into any other exposure mode on the top, that's what the cameras are using to decide what settings to use for your images. And there's a whole bunch of little icons for particular shortcuts. There's a little green auto button where the camera's going to decide all three for you. And then there's a couple of other ones such as aperture priority or shutter priority, where you know the aperture that you want to use, and the camera's going to choose the shutter speed for you and that kind of thing. So there's some inbuilt kind of automation that you can go to. Personally, I'd rather you got the pictures is the main thing. So if you're feeling unconfident about your understanding of the metering, you could always put it into one of the auto modes, or you could put it into the one next to the green auto mode, which is a little no flash symbol, which is automatic but without the flash going off. And I would encourage you to sort of experiment with that and see if you get the results you want, because you're going to get the pictures and you'll pick up on that whole thing of taking pictures, of getting the composition and the timing right, which is really important. The metering side of it's an important thing to understand, but it's not the be all and end all of using these cameras. And I think that's mostly what I would just want to run through on here. The point that you kind of have to use, it's that dial for your shutter speed, and then you have to hold this button here and do the dial, or you have to hold this button on the side and do the dial to change the ISO and the aperture, and what this meter's going to do. And I think the rest of it will come just through playing and through experimentation. Once you've got shots you like, you can review them on the back of the camera. There's that little play button just there. And that's going to bring up a whole bunch of info about the image. It will also allow you to scroll forwards and backwards through your photos with the little arrow keys on this touchpad, like so, or to scroll through different bits of information about that image. So you can interrogate the camera for what results you've got. Are they going to be usable? Can you take it from here straight out of the camera and put it onto Facebook? Can you take it from here? And does it need to go into Photoshop and be processed because it's a raw file? Little things like that are going to be tucked away in these files. Okay, so I'm looking forward to bringing cameras down to the forge, and I hope this little video has been useful just to run through some of the basics before we get started down there, and look forward to seeing you there. Cheers.